What's up, Guardians, and welcome back to another Destiny gameplay video. In this video I'm going to be showing you a build that I use on my Nightstalker, a build that centers around mobility, and this build is all about specifically the 3v3 playlist. This is a build that doesn't cater well towards big crowds. It's more about mobility and getting yourself in and out of situations, positioning yourself strategically around the map, and managing multiple targets and staying alive. Now, the three core base abilities on this build are Vanish in Smoke, Void Wall Grenade, and obviously Shadestep. So here's a quick clip that'll show you all three of those things being used in conjunction. Basically, Shadestep is used evasively. After I pop a shot, I'll Shadestep, throw a grenade for controlling the environment, basically forcing him to go a different way. Use the invisibility so that here's the thing about invisibility, and if you're really interested in seeing how this plays out, this whole build, I've got a like a 3-hour stream that is my last stream that you can check out on Twitch, and you can see how this plays out, and I kind of talk about all these features. But basically, the invisibility isn't necessarily about not being seen, because visually they can still see you. The invisibility is really all about taking yourself off the radar so that you can position yourself differently. So what you want to do is use the invisibility not as a way of breaking line of sight, but after you break line of sight, that's when you want to use the invisibility to take yourself off the radar, and then you want to position yourself somewhere else, somewhere more strategic, and you'll see me do that a lot in this video. So basically, when you use the Vanish in Smoke, you want to use it in a moment when you're not seen, be it before an engagement or when you're in the middle of an engagement and you break line of sight. Shadestep is primarily used as an evasive maneuver. The way that I use it is a lot of times, and you'll see this in the gameplay here, a lot of times what I will do is pop off a sniper round and then immediately Shadestep. And so what that's going to do is it's going to try and help deter counter sniping. You see here, I also use Shadestep to set up snipes. So a lot of times what you'll have is there are players who hard scope hallways and bottlenecks, and if you want to get in there and take a shot at them, what I'll do is I'll Shadestep into that area where they're hard scoped, or I'm kind of anticipating that they're hard scoped there, so that if I just simply walk into a room or walk into a choke point, they're just going to wreck me with a sniper rifle. So instead, if you Shadestep into that area, then it sort of messes up their aim assist, and they have to try and sort of reposition their sights on the fly. And a lot of players really struggle with the fast target acquisition. So if you are a player that has strong target acquisition, then Shadestepping into an area where they're hard scoped can help give you the edge, because then you can kind of get your quick scope on, and you'll see a lot of that in the video. There's already been a number of those in the gameplay. Now, in terms of exotic armor, you've got a couple of choices. You could use the Graviton helmet that grants you Shadestep so that you can have the tracking ability as well, and that's really nice to have. But I tend to default towards the Sealed Ahamkara grasps so that I can have 2 smoke grenades, so I can Vanish and Smoke more frequently. Now, like I said, sometimes people will see you when you're invis. I mean, obviously you're not completely invisible. It's more about taking yourself off the radar, so you have to sort of be able to adjust. And when you are seen, use Shadestep evasively to position yourself differently and maybe sort of jack up their target acquisition. And you'll see here I use Shadestep evasively when, like I said earlier, I just take a shot, and that first shot I hit, and then I Shadestepped. The second shot I missed, and that's when Shadestep really helps, because when you miss, it makes it so that you can get out of there and still survive that encounter. And that's really important, obviously. Now let's talk weapon choice. I'm rolling with scout rifles primarily. I've got a number of scout rifles that I use. Sometimes I use the Mida multi-tool, but then I also use the Last Extremity. I also use Not Like the Others. I have a Not Like the Others that I really like, and there's a lot of the gameplay in here is using that scout rifle. But I've got one I really like. I got some good rolls on it. It's just a random one that I got out of an engram that I was really pleased with. I've got Outlaw on it and some really nice scopes. But I use that primarily as my primary. I like scout rifles quite a bit in this current meta. Post 2.0, post TTK, I think scout rifles are pretty strong. I'm also using a sniper rifle that has low zoom and a decent rate of fire. I'm not too concerned about banging off the revive. This here, actually, these 3 snipes you're about to see, this is in a sort of impromptu sweaty we got into mid-stream yesterday. And we went against these 3 guys, turned into a sweaty. We played 3 matches together, waved off all the heavy, and we ended up winning 2 out of 3. It was really fun. But so just to attest that this build does work against good players. But anyways, I'm less concerned about banging off the revive as I used to be. And that's really the place where that really matters. Obviously, is Trials of Osiris. That's when it's a huge factor. But just for playing the standard 3v3 playlist, I'm a little less concerned about it nowadays. There are only a handful of snipers in 2.0 that can bang off revives, so there's less of a chance of it happening to you. And honestly, if you're controlling the map well, you can still deter revives, and there's still ways that you can sort of defend against the revive other than just banging off of it. I do think that it's an important thing on a sniper rifle, but it's not the defining feature of a sniper, whether it's good or not. So obviously they introduced this new type of sniper rifle in 2.0, and the Defiance of Yasmin kind of falls into this category where it's a decently high impact, but it's just under something like a longbow LDR, 1,000-yard stare. So it is just under what is required to be able to bang off a revive. They're going to have just a smidge of health left. Now, in terms of heavy, you can use whatever you want. Frankly, I don't use heavy very much. I try to control the heavy ammo spawns. That way, when it does come up, we can get all the heavy, and then we just don't have to use it anymore, if that makes sense. I prefer not to use heavy. Anything that takes away from good gunplay, I just try to avoid. I don't have anything really against using heavy ammo in public, lobbies, just because your opponents are using it. But if I get full heavy control, then I won't use it. But that's just kind of personal preferences. Now, I'm also using Quiver, and you'll see that in some of the gameplay. I've already shown some bits and pieces there. I do prefer, overall, I do really like Black Hole for that particular skill slot in the Nightstalker build. But for this particular build that's all about sort of stealth and mobility, I'm rolling with Quiver just because in the skirmish playlist, especially in salvage as well, which is what this build really caters towards, there's a whole lot of instances where your opponents aren't close enough to be tethered together, and so you kind of really have to be picky about when you use your super if you're using Black Hole. But this gives you a little bit more freedom. I feel okay about using my super on one person if I really need to, and then kind of searching for other targets. But overall, I like Black Hole quite a bit, but just for this particular build, I'm using Quiver. This is one of those, I said 9 out of 10 times I'd prefer Black Hole, and this is one of those 1 out of 10 times. This is when I'm playing this particular setup on my Nightstalker that's less about control and more about mobility. Another thing that Shadestep is great for is getting out of grenades and smoke bombs like that, and it really saved my life. I was able to pull this guy back towards a teammate so that he could finish him off. But otherwise, I was stuck in a corner, and it would have definitely been dead there. So Shadestep, great for getting out of grenades. Earlier in the gameplay, I got out of a lightning grenade. So make sure that you kind of keep that in mind. Shadestep is one of those things that it's easy to forget that you have it equipped. So you really have to force yourself to be in the mindset to remember that you have it and to remember to use it when it makes sense. And that only comes with playing for a while. And that's kind of the story of this entire build. You really do have to take your time to play it extensively before you really start to get a feeling for how it plays. There's a lot of factors here, including using Vanish and Smoke. After you break line of sight, use it as a way to move around the map and position yourself better because you take yourself off their radar. Once you Vanish and Smoke, you have to start thinking about, okay, now I need to stay out of their line of sight. So jump over doorways, jump over choke points and hallways so that they still don't see you if they're like hard scoped in. That way you can kind of move around better and position yourself in a way that's going to give you the advantage. You can also have to remember that you have Vanish and Smoke as an option when you're looking at your radar and you see opponents on either side of you. Also use it here when this area is being hard scoped, so I give myself just another approach here so that while they're focused on my teammate on the left, I can actually move up on the right so that we have you kind of force them to look in one or the other place so that you can kind of coordinate your push better. So I hope this build has been helpful. Hopefully you give it a try, and when you do, give me some feedback. Let me know how it works for you, and we'll catch you in the Crucible, guys.